Hello! Welcome to this lesson. In our first lesson, we learned how to do HTML elements, where we learned how to put words and links and images on a web page. Then on the second lesson, we learned how to start styling some things, these elements. The third lesson, we learned how to style specific things using ID and class. And now, really, to make our things look professional, our websites look professional, we need to start talking about layout. Now, I want to look at a few professional websites, and maybe we can make a determination about what makes them professional. If you look at this website, this is the NewYorkTimesGreat.com, great website. You'll notice that this isn't just words stacked on top of each other. There seems to be some sort of order here. And if you were to look really closely, you notice that this is actually just a lot of grids. And by grid, I mean this. If you went to this section of the New York Times, you'd see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, right? And then there's all these rows of it. So 5 columns with 1, 2, 3 rows. Same thing over here. There's 5 columns, a little bit smaller rows. If you went to the top, you would see that there's this big row with 2 smaller columns, but there's a grid system going on here. Same thing if you went to YouTube. If you go to YouTube, same thing. You got this one long row over here, but then you have these grids, right? You have kind of broken down to these grids of 4 columns and a bunch of rows. This one has 3 columns, then it goes back to 4 columns. If you went to Amazon.com, same thing. If you look over here, 4 columns. This one is one big column, then 2 more columns, and this is actually a little grid inside a grid, but it's just grids. And then they have a long row. Anyway, we could do this all day, but you'll notice that professionally made websites really are just grid systems. So what we got to learn out today is how to do a layout using this CSS Grid system. It's called CSS Grid, in fact. That's good for when you're Googling your questions that you will have. So this is what we're starting with today. I want to walk you through our starter code. You'll see that there's this one div, this big div called a wrapper. And just to be clear, what a div is really just a box that you're going to put your content in. Divs don't have anything inside of them. They're not links. They're not words. They're literally just containers for your layout. So what I made is a container div. And this is a big box that we're going to put a bunch of other divs in. So inside of our big box, we're going to put 6 more boxes, right? And these is box 1, box 2 to box 6. And if you look at it, it looks like this. It kind of doesn't look great like that. Let me actually add something here. I'm going to say this margin. And we're going to give it 10 pixels of margin. We'll take that out later so you can kind of see what this looks like. So you see right here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes all stacked on top of each other. But if we wanted to make this professional, really we would kind of want things next to each other and so and such like that. So let's take a look here. So let's say I were to make a website, just to sketch it out. What you'll do is you'd make a container box, right? So this is the whole web page and this is our container. And if you want to look professional, maybe it would have one long box over here and then maybe a shorter box over here. Oops, I don't like that. And then maybe you'd have an information box on the side over here that's a bit longer. And then you'd have another box over here, and then you'd have maybe one long footer over here. And this could be what a professional layout would look like. And then you'd put the content in each of these divs. All right, this is what we're going to try to make today. So let's actually start the coding now. So the way you're going to do that is this. First, we got to start with our big box, the wrapper. This could be called anything, by the way. I just decided to call it wrapper, but that's our container box. And so what we want to do is, we want to do hashtag wrapper, not rapper like Jay-Z, just wrapper, it's never mind. All right, so in that we want to tell the computer, want to tell CSS, hey, we want to do a grid system here. So it's okay, this guy wants to do grid, or girl, sorry, or whatever you identify as. It's 2020. So we want to display this as a grid. The first thing we're going to do is set up how many columns we want. So we do this, grid grid template columns. And we could tell it, let's say we want 2 columns. The way we would do that is we'd say we want 2 columns and each column takes up 50%. So it's 50%, 50%. That adds up to 100 because we want to take up 100% of our page. And see how I put 2 numbers here, no commas, 50%, 50%. And you see how everything got separated into 2 columns. Now also, you notice it's kind of ugly. Maybe I want my boxes to be a little bit bigger, or my rows. These are kind of skinny rows. So we could actually set up a row system. So we'd say grid, not GERD, grid template rows, and then we would say 100 pixels, 100 pixels, 100 pixels. And that would look pretty nice. By the way, take out this margin now. Now that we set up our rows. Oh, no, we do. Yes, actually take out this margin right now. It's going to smush everything together like this, but we can actually take it. So now they're all smushed together, we actually can create this. It's called a grid gap. We'd say grid gap. And we'll say we want a gap between all of our rows and all of our columns to be 10 pixels wide. And now we got this beautiful looking thing. Great. You know what? Let's set this to 200. Actually, no, 100 works out. I like 100. I like 100. Let's stick with 100. So there we go. Looking pretty good so far. Now, let's say we wanted, let's say 4 columns. What we would do is instead of doing 50%, 50%, we could do 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. And now it's 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Each one a quarter or 25% of the page. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, and it doesn't keep going. All right, let's say we made these 200 pixels instead of 100 pixels. You'd see that the rows get a little bit bigger. Like that, and now we have bigger rows. I like the 100 though, so I'll go back to 100. And let's say we wanted to split into thirds. We could do, well, it's not really evenly divisible, but we could do 33% as a pretty close approximation. And that's what it would look like. So now we have 3 rows, each 33%. Now the best way to do it is for columns is not to use percentages. You can, but the most commonly used thing is called fractions or 1FR. Now each FR is basically a ratio. So let's say I wanted 3 columns. I would do 1FR, 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 and I would get 3 columns, each one with the same ratio of 1. Oops, I know why that happened. Gotta put your semicolon. See how we got now 3 columns, each one with the same ratio. It's basically the fraction is each one is 1/3, right? Each one's 1, 1, 1. Let's say I did 1, 1, and 2. What you get is 1, 1, and 2. So basically it's broken into fourths. So this is 1 portion, 1 fraction, 1 fraction, 2 fractions. And this is basically the best way to do it. I like just working in ones. If I wanted a 4th column, I'd just do another one. You could do 4, you could do 5, you could do 6, you could do whatever you want. But for our purposes today, what we're going to do is this. We're going to stick with 3 columns. So now, right now we have 3 columns and 3 rows. Obviously, there's no filler for the 3, and it's looking pretty good. So how can we get something to look like this? Or we get something that spans this long thing and then this kind of shorter div. So if we go back here, we want box 1 to cover 2 columns and box 3 to cover only 1 column. The way we could do that is this. Go to your CSS, and what we're going to do is we're going to style box 1, which has an ID of box 1. It's already there. I already gave it to it. So we'll go like this, hashtag box 1. Now, here's where things get a little bit confusing if you're not already confused. What we could do is tell our box where we want it to start and where we want it to end. So we want box 1 to start over here and end over here. Now, how do we tell the computer to do that? Well, here's the key understanding. If you're going to pay attention to anything, this is it. You have to know that these gaps are all the numbers that we're going to use. So each gap here matters. So this is position 1, this is position 2, this is position 3, and this is position 4. So even though there's 3 columns, there's 4 positions. The start, 2, 3, and 4. So if we want box 1 to take up from here to here, what we say is we want to start at 1 and end at 3. So we would just say this, grid, oops, not right there, grid, column, start, I want it to start at 1, and grid, column, end at 3. And if you look, now it goes from 1 to 3, right? And our second box automatically just fills out that from 3 to 4. Perfect. So we're looking pretty good for what our purposes are. Now our next one, we want to kind of do the opposite, right? We kind of want this one to take up 1, and we want this big one to take up like the next 2 columns. So let's start off by doing this. We're going to say this. We want our box 3 to start from 1 and go to 2. Which it already does, but just for practice, we're going to do this. So we're going to say box 3. We want, and I'm going to cheat here. I'm just going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to go from 1 to 2. Nothing changes. But here's where we can get fancy. What I want is for it to actually take up 2 rows. You see how this one's longer? We want to go 2 rows. So what we're actually going to do is this. We're going to get our box to span 2 separate rows. So this is not where we want to start. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to start at 2 and go all the way down to 4. So we want to start at 2, go to 4. So we're going to say this, grid, oh, my invitation, grid, row, start, 1. Sorry, I lied to you. We determined that was 2. We're going to start it at position 2. And then we're going to end it at 4. So grid, row, end at 4. We'll see, now it takes up 2. Now we want to move on to our next box. We want this box 4 to cover from here to here and down here. So we want to start at position, so remember this is 1, 2. We want to start at 2 and go from 2, 3 to 4. So we're going to go from 2 to 4. So if we go here, we're going to say box 4. We want it to start at 2, and let's just take this. We'll steal that. Do need a little bit more indentation because it looks gross if you don't indent. Oh my gosh. Sorry about this, guys. So we want to go from 2 to 4. So now if we look at box 4, good, it's going 2. But we also want it to start up here and go down. So remember, we want it to start at row 2 and go down not to row 3, but to row 4. So we're going to say, basically just cut and paste this. So grid row start at 2 and grid row end 4. And now we got this looking. So looking pretty good so far. Yeah. Well, now we just want to style these last ones. I'm just going to make them expand all the way across like we did before. So for box number, let's see, box 5, what we're going to do is have it go all the way across. So we're going to say hashtag box 5. And what we're going to have it do is go all the way across. So we're going to say grid, column, start. And we want to start at 1, right? We want to start all the way over here. We want to go all the way across. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we want to go from 1 to 4. So we're grid, column, end at 4. That will go all the way across now. And by the way, you notice that it's not at 100 because I actually already could have done my 3 rows. This is 1, 2, and 3. So I actually have to start adding some more rows. Looks like this is actually going to end up being 5 rows. So I'm going to do 100 pixels, 100 pixels. Now I'll get myself to a few extra rows, looking better. And for box 6, I'm going to do something a little bit fancy. I'm going to get it to cover 2 rows, but they're going to be in the middle. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to say this. So for box 6, what we're going to do is grid, column, start, 2. Oh, I didn't mean to put a 0 there. So we're going to start it at 2, right? And then we're going to say grid, column, end at 3, which it automatically did anyway, but I just like being fancy with that. All right, so that is our website. It looks pretty good. Looks pretty much like the New York Times, if you ask me. We just have to put some words in there instead of box 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so you can get started with your exercise now. It's pretty similar to this, and you just have to match a mock-up picture with your code. All right, good luck, and that is Grid. Sorry for the long video. Kiss your mom. Bye.